relax, and let the story begin. It begins at an airport, not the most beautiful airport in the world. The hallways are long and white, and somewhere a child is crying, and someone is calling out a name, and it smells like coffee and jet fuel. But for one person, in this moment, this is the most magical place on earth. IshowSpeed, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a bright red hoodie he has had on for 3 flights in a row, stands at the gate and stares at his boarding pass as though it might disappear at any moment. Lisbon, Portugal. He reads the word one more time, and then again. He hadn't slept the night before. That wasn't unusual for him. He rarely slept well before a big moment, but this was different. This wasn't the nerves before a live stream, or the excitement before a tournament. This was something bigger, something he couldn't yet name. A friend of a friend had a contact. The contact had called an assistant. The assistant had said, maybe, no promises, but maybe. And Speed had said, I'm coming. The plane took off in the morning, just as the sun was rising above the horizon and the edges of the clouds were turning orange. Speed sat by the window. He watched the city below him grow smaller and smaller. The streets, the buildings, the parking lots, all of it shrinking until it disappeared into the clouds. He closed his eyes. He thought about the first time he had ever seen Cristiano Ronaldo. Not in real life. He was 7 years old then, watching on a small television in his mother's living room. Ronaldo had just scored. An overhead kick. Spectacular. Impossible. As if gravity had decided to make an exception just for him. Speed had screamed. So loudly that his mother came running in to see if something was wrong. Nothing was wrong. Everything was right. The plane flew through the clouds and Speed fell asleep with a smile on his face. Breathe in, slowly, and out. Lisbon welcomed him with warmth. Not the warmth of a summer's day. It was early in the season, the air still cool. But the warmth of a city that has existed for centuries and knows it. The buildings were old and yellow and white, with blue tiles on their facades catching the morning light. The streets ran up and down, narrow and winding, filled with the sound of trams and birds and people speaking Portuguese in a way that sounded like music. Speed stepped out of the taxi and stood still for a moment. He breathed in the air. It smelled like the sea and freshly baked bread, and something floral he couldn't name. The hotel was simple but clean. A white room with a white bed and a window that looked out onto a small square where an old man sat on a bench with a newspaper. Speed put down his bag, sat on the edge of the bed, looked at his hands. Tomorrow he would go to that house. He took out his phone and put it away again. He didn't want to call anyone. He wanted to keep this moment for himself, like something precious that breaks if you talk about it too much. He lay down on the bed, still in his clothes, and stared at the ceiling, and somewhere between thinking and dreaming, he fell asleep. Feel how quiet it is, how still. Breathe in and out. The next morning, Speed stood before a gate. It was a large black iron gate, with a small camera built into it that watched him like a round, quiet eye. Behind the gate was a driveway of white stone, lined with palm trees that swayed gently in the breeze, and at the end of that driveway stood a house, large, white, with wide windows that reflected the sky. Speed had been standing there for 5 minutes. He hadn't pressed the bell yet. He took a deep breath. He thought about his mother, about his fans, about the 7-year-old boy who had screamed at a small television. He pressed the bell. There was a soft click, and then the gate moved. An assistant, a calm woman with a kind face, guided him inside. They walked up the driveway, past the palm trees, past a fountain where the water murmured softly. Speed looked around, trying to take everything in at once. The front door was large and heavy and made a deep, solid sound when it opened. Inside, it was quiet. The hallway was wide and tall, with a marble floor that gleamed like still water. On the walls hung photographs. Not the kind of posters Speed had on his bedroom wall, but real photographs in black frames of moments the whole world had seen but which here hung quietly and privately. Ronaldo in a white Real Madrid shirt, Ronaldo lifting a trophy, Ronaldo laughing with his children, and then the trophy room. The assistant opened a door on the side and left Speed alone for a moment. He stepped inside. The room wasn't large, but every inch of it was filled with history. On glass shelves stood trophies, gold and silver and bronze of every size from every competition. The 5 Ballon d'Or stood in a row, like kings on a throne. Beside them, the Champions League cups, the national titles, the Euro 2016 trophy. Speed stood still. He walked slowly along the shelves. His fingers nearly touched the glass, but he held back. It felt sacred, in a way he couldn't quite explain. "That 2008 Ballon d'Or," said a voice behind him, "was the most beautiful one." Speed turned around. Cristiano Ronaldo stood in the doorway, taller than Speed had expected, and Speed himself was not small, broader, calmer. Wearing a simple white sweater and dark trousers, his hair still slightly damp from the shower, his gaze friendly but also present, as though he filled the room without trying. Speed opened his mouth, closed it again. Cristiano smiled, a warm, real smile, not the smile he wore for cameras. "Easy," he said. "I'm just a person." They shook hands. Cristiano's grip was firm but not forceful. "You're Speed," he said. "Yeah," said Speed. And then, without planning it, "I've looked up to you my whole life." Cristiano nodded, not smugly. He simply received it. "Come," he said. "Let's sit down." They walked to a large living room with tall windows looking out onto the garden. Outside, the grass was deep green, and somewhere a child was playing. One of Cristiano's sons, small and energetic, chasing a ball. They sat down at a wooden table. Tea was brought, and water, and small biscuits on a white plate. Nobody ate anything. That was fine. The conversation started slowly, the way all good conversations do. Cristiano asked about Speed's channel, how it had started, what he wanted from it. Speed talked, carefully at first, then more openly, about how he had grown up without much money, how he had started with a cheap camera in a small room, how he had decided to just give everything, his real reactions, his real tears, his real joy, no filter, no mask. Cristiano listened, really listened. His phone was somewhere else. His eyes were on Speed. "I admire that," he said quietly, "that you dare to show yourself." Speed looked up. "Really? People think fame is easy, that once you're known, everything takes care of itself." Cristiano paused, looked out the window. "But you know what it feels like when the whole world is watching, when every moment is being judged, when you have a bad day and everyone sees it." Speed nodded slowly. "Yeah. You've made millions of people laugh, cry, think. That is a gift, too." A silence fell, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of two people who recognized something in each other, something hard to name but clearly felt. "You know," said Cristiano eventually, "I always thought that one day I would have had enough of all this. The football, the attention, always having to be the best." He paused. "But what I really missed, all those years, was just someone who was truly themselves, someone who didn't treat me like a trophy." Speed looked at him. Cristiano looked back. "I think you might be that person," said Cristiano. "Breathe in, slowly, and out. Feel how warm it is." In the weeks that followed, they became friends. Not the kind of friends who share each other's photos for likes. Not the kind of friends who know each other from events and premieres. Real friends. The kind you call when something goes wrong. The kind around whom you can simply be yourself without any effort. The first morning at the training complex. The grass was so green, it seemed almost unreal in the early morning light. A deep, velvet green, still wet with dew. The air smelled of grass and sea salt, and somewhere in the distance came the faint sound of a helicopter passing over. Speed stood at the edge of the pitch with his hands in his pockets. Cristiano threw him a ball without warning. Speed didn't catch it. It hit his chest and dropped to the ground. Cristiano watched him. Shoot! Speed picked up the ball, set it down, looked at the goal, swung his foot. The ball flew well wide. Cristiano narrowed his eyes slightly, opened his mouth, closed it again. "Your technique isn't bad," he said at last, diplomatically. "The direction was a little free," said Speed. "The ball nearly ended up on a different field. Nearly." They laughed, and that was the beginning of everything. Cristiano began to teach Speed, not in a condescending way, not like a teacher who knows better, but like someone who has something precious and wants to share it. "Plant foot," said Cristiano, stepping beside Speed. "Everything starts with the plant foot. That determines where the ball goes, not your shooting foot. The plant foot." Speed tried again. The ball went slightly less far to the left this time. "Better," said Cristiano. "You sound like you're lying." "I never lie about football." Every morning they trained. The sun was low when they started, high when they finished. Speed's shoes grew dark with dew. His legs ached in places he had never felt before, but he never stopped. One morning, after an hour of shooting, Cristiano sat down beside him on the grass. "Why do you never stop?" he asked. Speed looked at him. "What do you mean?" "You're tired, I can see it. Your legs hurt, but you just keep going." Speed shrugged. "I've always been like that. If I want something, I keep going until it works." Cristiano nodded slowly. "I recognize that." One afternoon they walked through Lisbon together. Cristiano wore a cap and sunglasses, and still he was recognized. Twice, 3 times, people stopping and pointing and whispering. But he smiled and kept walking, and the city let him go. They walked along the Tagus, the wide river that cuts through the city, the water silver grey in the afternoon light. They ate pastel de nata at a small table on a terrace, the little creamy custard tarts that made Lisbon famous, and drank coffee so strong that Speed flinched when he tasted it. "This is the best thing I have ever eaten," said Speed, still chewing. Cristiano looked satisfied. "Portugal has the best food in the world." "You only say that because you're from here." "I say it because it's true." They walked on, past old churches and narrow alleyways with laundry hanging on lines strung between buildings. Cristiano pointed things out. Here he had played as a child. There his mother had always bought bread. This street he remembered from before everything. "You miss it," said Speed. It wasn't a question. Cristiano glanced at him. "Sometimes, the ordinary life, when nobody knows who you are. But everyone knows who you are. Yes," he paused, "but you treat me as though that isn't true." One evening they spent time at Cristiano's mother's house. She lived in a simple home, not far from the big white house where Cristiano stayed. The kitchen smelled of garlic and olive oil and something simmering on the stove. She was small and energetic with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and she hugged Speed as though she already knew him. "My son told me about you," she said in broken English. "He says you are funny." "I try my best," said Speed. "He also says you cannot play football." Speed looked at Cristiano. "Did you actually say that?" Cristiano kept his face perfectly straight. "I said you were making progress." They ate together at a small table. The food was simple and perfect. Bread and grilled fish and vegetables and wine for the grown-ups and water for everyone. Cristiano's mother told stories about what he had been like as a child, stubborn, driven, always with a ball at his feet. And Cristiano listened with a smile Speed hadn't seen on his face before, a boyish smile, soft and old at the same time. After dinner they sat outside on a small veranda. The evening was warm and still. Somewhere nearby someone was playing guitar. "This is beautiful," said Speed quietly. "Yes," said Cristiano. I thought your life would look very different. Bigger, more expensive, more what?" Speed searched for the word. "More show." Cristiano laughed. "The show is for outside. Here I am, just Cristiano." Another evening, watching football on the sofa. A Champions League match on a large screen in the living room. Cristiano's sons were sprawled between them, the youngest already half asleep, the oldest watching intently. Speed shouted at every attack. Cristiano gave commentary, calm and analytical, pointing out things Speed didn't see at first. The position of the fullbacks, the space between the lines, the way the striker used his body to shield the ball from the defender. "Do you see that?" said Cristiano. "What?" "His foot. He plants it so the defender thinks he's going left, but he goes right." Speed watched, didn't see it, watched again, and then he saw it. "Oh," he said. "Oh," repeated Cristiano, satisfied. "Let yourself drift. Feel how peaceful everything is. Breathe in and out." One afternoon they played a game of one-on-one on the small pitch behind the house. Cristiano won, of course, but Speed scored once, a shot from just outside the little circle that Cristiano saw too late, and he ran across the pitch with his arms wide open as though he had just won the Champions League. "Siu!" he shouted, exactly the way Cristiano always did. Cristiano stood still, looked at him, and then burst out laughing, the kind of laugh that gives you a stomachache. "That's my thing," he said. "Now it's my thing too. 1 goal and you think you're Ronaldo. 1 goal against Ronaldo, so technically..." They laughed hard, both of them, standing in the middle of that little pitch with the sun directly above them and the grass beneath their feet. And in that laughter was something hard to describe. An equality. 2 people who both knew what it meant to stand before millions, to always be on, to perform when the world was watching, and who here on this small pitch were simply 2 friends. Breathe gently, feel how warm it is, let the images drift softly through you. It was a quiet Wednesday morning. The mist still lay low over the grass of the training complex. The air was cool and grey but soft, the kind of morning that invites you to move slowly and say little. They had trained for an hour, shooting, dribbling, positional play. Speed's technique had noticeably grown in the weeks that had passed. His plant foot now landed correctly almost automatically. His shots came harder and more accurately. His body had begun to remember the movements. They sat on a wooden bench beside the pitch. Speed still in his boots, his hair damp with sweat. Cristiano with his arms resting on his knees, his gaze on the empty field before them. For a while, neither said anything. It was the kind of silence that only exists between people who are truly friends. "I want to ask you something," said Cristiano. His voice sounded different from usual, quieter, more considered. Speed looked sideways. Cristiano kept looking at the pitch. "The World Cup," he said. "Portugal is playing this year." Speed nodded. "I've been speaking over the past weeks with the national coach, with the president of the Portuguese Football Federation." A brief pause. "It is possible, legally speaking, to apply for a Portuguese passport if you have a demonstrated connection to the country, time spent here, integration, and if the Federation is willing to support the process." Speed didn't move. "You have trained every single day for the past weeks," Cristiano continued. "I have watched you grow in ways I did not expect, not just technically, but the way you play, the energy, the drive, the will to win. That cannot be trained. You either have it or you don't." He paused, and then he looked Speed directly in the eyes. "I want you to play with me, for Portugal, at the World Cup." The silence that followed was the deepest silence Speed had ever known. He could hear his own heartbeat, the soft sound of wind moving over the grass. Somewhere far away, a bird. "Cristiano," he said eventually, his voice low, "I know what you want to say. I'm not a professional footballer." "No, but you are an athlete, and you have something that professional footballers sometimes don't." Cristiano leaned back. "In my career I have played alongside the best players in the world. Zidane, Figo, Messi." He paused briefly at that name. "And I have learned that the biggest difference doesn't live in technique. It lives here." He placed a hand on his chest. "In what you are willing to give." Speed looked at the pitch. He thought about everything, about the weeks here, about the mornings on the grass, about the evenings at the table, about the feeling he had got every time he had struck the ball cleanly, a feeling of pure, unfiltered joy. And he thought about the 7-year-old boy screaming at a small television. Slowly he began to smile, a smile that started somewhere deep inside like a small flame and grew warmer and wider until it filled his whole face. "Okay," he said. Cristiano looked at him. "Okay," Speed said again, "I'll do it." Cristiano nodded, and for the first time that morning he smiled too, a smile that said, "I already knew." They shook hands and held on just for a moment. Two friends, two champions, two people who had seen in each other what the rest of the world had missed. Breathe in and slowly out. Feel how light you feel. The day Speed first walked into the training camp of the Portuguese national team was a day he would never forget. The complex was situated outside the city among the hills, surrounded by pine and oak trees. The air was clean and cool. The grass on the pitches was perfect, professionally cut line by line, green as a painting. At the entrance, a small group of players was waiting. Speed knew the faces. Everyone in the world knew those faces. They appeared on shirts and sticker books and enormous billboards in city centres. And now they stood here, in real life, and they were looking at him. Cristiano walked beside him. "Easy," he said quietly, just as he had on that very first day. "Easy for you to say," Speed muttered. "The first 10 minutes are the hardest. After that, you..." Of the pitch, arms at his sides, the world around him in motion, people cheering, players running, lights flashing, but he stood still. He thought about the small television, about his mother coming in, about the posters on his bedroom wall, about the plane to Lisbon, about the gate, about Cristiano saying, "Easy, I'm just a person." And he began to cry. Just like that, in the middle of the pitch, tears on his cheeks in the stadium lights. Cristiano stood beside him, placed a hand on his shoulder, said nothing. There was nothing that needed to be said. Half-time, 2-0. The dressing room at the break was calm. The coach talked about positioning and maintaining pressure, but the mood was good. They knew it wasn't over. Argentina would come back, would give everything they had, and they did. The 67th minute. Messi received the ball 20 metres out. 1 touch. 2. His body moved in a way that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The defender went down, Messi shot. The ball went in, 2-1. The Argentine section of the stadium burst. The Portuguese section held its breath. Speed stood on the halfway line and watched Messi walk calmly back toward the centre circle, his face unreadable. This was it then. The tension the whole world had been waiting for. Ronaldo against Messi. 1 goal in it. 20 minutes left. Portugal reorganised, stayed calm, kept playing, and in the 78th minute, a free kick for Portugal. Just outside the penalty area, 12 metres from the wall, Cristiano placed the ball. The stadium held its breath. He stepped back, his run-up short, his plant foot precise, his shooting leg threw the ball in a way that only he knew. After all these years, after all those thousands of free kicks in training and in matches, in cold and in warmth, when nobody was watching and when everyone was watching. The ball curled, over the wall, past the outstretched hand of the goalkeeper, into the corner, 3-1. It was as if the air was pulled from the stadium and something else took its place, something larger, something purer. The Portuguese fans rose as one. The noise was no longer describable as sound. It was something physical, something you felt in your chest. Cristiano turned, arms wide, eyes closed for 1 moment, and in the 88th minute, a counter. Portugal won the ball on their own half, 1-2, 2-3. The ball reached Cristiano deep in the Argentine half. Cristiano saw Speed running, played the ball through perfectly into the space ahead of Speed. Speed took the ball, 1 touch. He looked up at the goal. The goalkeeper large, the space narrow. He shot, cool, precise. The ball flew past the post, in, 4-1. Speed turned and stood still, arms wide, head up, eyes closed. Around him players were running. Someone jumped on his back. Someone shouted his name. And somewhere, among all that noise, there was a moment of absolute silence. His own silence, from inside. A warmth, a completeness. The final whistle sounded like music. Portugal were world champions. The celebration was loud and long and full of colour. Confetti in red and green and gold. Players dancing and shouting and crying and laughing. The trophy moving from hand to hand, held aloft, kissed by everyone. Speed held the trophy. They let him hold the trophy. He felt its weight, heavier than he had expected, cool in his hands, with a shine that caught the light from every direction. Late in the night, when the celebration had gradually grown quieter, Speed and Cristiano sat on a bench outside the stadium. Most people had gone back inside. Outside it was still, a stillness that feels like what remains after a storm. The sky was clear, the stars were bright. For a while, neither said anything. "How does it feel?" asked Cristiano eventually. Speed thought about it, searched for the right word. "Like a dream," he said. Cristiano smiled. "Then now you know. Dreams come true." "You know," said Speed after a pause, "I always thought you were the one I looked up to. That it all went one way, me looking up at you." Cristiano glanced at him. "But I think—" Speed paused. "I think friendship doesn't work like that. I think you got something from me too. Not the football, but something else." Cristiano was quiet, and then he nodded. "Yes," he said softly. "You showed me what it feels like when someone truly sees you. Not the trophies, not the shirt. You saw Cristiano." He paused. "That is a rare gift." They sat outside for a long time. The city slowly fell asleep around them. The lights went out one by one, the stars remained. And on that bench, in that quiet night, they were not the world champion and the famous streamer. They were simply two friends, two people who had stepped into each other's lives in a way nobody could have predicted. And it was perfect. Let the image slowly fade. The stadium, the confetti, the trophy, the stars above the bench. Everything becomes softer, quieter, warmer. You're here now, safe in your bed, wrapped in warmth and stillness. Feel how your pillow holds your head, how your blanket feels heavy and soft, how your breath moves in and out gently like a calm sea. In and out, in and out. Dreams come true, not always in the way you expected, not always at the moment you would have chosen, but sometimes, when you stay open, when you allow yourself to be seen, when you find someone who believes in you, anything is possible. Even the things that seemed impossible, even the things that only existed in your head on a Sunday morning in front of a small television when you were 7 years old and the world was still vast and unknown and full of wonder. Let that feeling stay with you tonight, in your sleep, in your dreams. You are safe, you are warm, you are exactly where you need to be. Sleep well.